2025 is the year of the e-invoice. That probably won't surprise you. In the past days and weeks, I have already published several videos on the topic of e-invoice obligation on this channel. And if you've never heard of it, then click here at the top right on this video and you'll be informed. And one of the most popular videos on the topic of e-invoicing is the video where I introduce you to free or very low-cost software solutions that allow you to create e-invoices. And shortly, after I published this video, I came across a tool that made me think this tool actually deserves its own video. And I'm talking about SumUp. Some of you might know SumUp, as SumUp makes card terminals. When you're in a bar, cafe, or restaurant and pay by card, and the terminal looks somehow a bit more modern and a bit cooler, then that huge bulky thing, then there's a good chance that this terminal is from SumUp. But SumUp not only builds card terminals, they also have a whole range of other offerings and end products. And one product is SumUp Invoices. And SumUp Invoices is an invoicing program, a relatively streamlined invoicing program. So, not a comprehensive accounting program with which you can or should be able to do everything like Lexware or Sevdesk, but really a streamlined program that focuses on doing everything you somehow need to do in the context of invoices. So, writing quotes, writing invoices, writing recurring invoices, writing delivery notes, cancelling the invoice, so writing a credit note. All the stuff that is now affected by the e-invoicing obligation, because you can no longer just send paper invoices or PDF invoices, or at least until the end of the transition period, until the end of 2026 or 2027. You can still do that until then, but not anymore afterwards. What you already have to do today is receive e-invoices. That means, what do you actually do when you receive an X-invoice? An X-invoice is an XML format. You have to be able to view it somehow. How do you know where, to whom, and how much money you have to pay when you have an XML file in front of you? And that's where SumUp Invoices helps you. Because with SumUp Invoices, you can simply upload this X invoice, and then the tool tells you what is actually contained in this invoice. And these large, complex accounting programs, as much as I like them, are of course completely oversized if you already have a process for your accounting and taxes, or if you let your tax advisor handle everything. Then for this e-invoicing obligation, you really only need a tool that allows you to fulfill this obligation. And I've heard this from some of you, which is why I thought we would just take a look in this video. Let's take a closer look at SumUp Invoices. And for that, I'll take you along on my screen. We are on the SumUp Invoices page, and we can already see what the whole thing essentially looks like. There is a desktop version that can be used via the browser and a dedicated app. This means you can also write your invoices on the go using the app. I have to honestly say, all tools offer this feature now. I've only done it once in my life, and I'm not the type to write invoices on a smartphone app. I don't know if this is the point where I'm getting old, it's just not my thing. But I do know that some people do it and some even enjoy it a lot. And they have it better than needing it. So, here's the point at this juncture. SumUp also has a mobile app through which you can write your invoices. And what interests us most is the e-invoicing process. This means you can write e-invoices, you can receive e-invoices. And SumUp is primarily a payment company, so it's always about payment. That's also what they do with their card terminals. And there's actually a nice feature with the invoices. Because with SumUp, when you write your invoices using SumUp Invoices, you get a link through which your customers can pay you immediately. This means you basically send this link with your invoice, and your customers can then, a second after they receive the invoice, click on it and pay you directly, and it's done just like that. And you get your money much faster, of course, than if you have a payment term of 30 days and it's fully utilized. Then you get your money next month. And with this direct payment option, the whole process is significantly faster. A feature that I personally find super exciting, but I'm sure some of you will view with skepticism, is the SumUp business account. Because with SumUp, you not only get a way to write e-invoices but you also get a business account, a free business account. And you can then use this business account to receive funds, to pay funds, meaning for your invoices that you have received. And you have a card with which you can go shopping, both online and in-store. And it more or less automatically comes with SumUp Invoices. This means you not only have an invoicing program, but also a bank account directly linked to it. You don't have to use it in the end. Of course, you can also simply put your own bank account on the invoice, and then you just receive your money into your other bank account, which you might already have. But If you're self-employed and don't yet have a separate business account, then you should urgently have one. Really? I mean, I know the discussion, there is no legal obligation to have a separate business account, but please do it. Every self-employed person, and yes, maybe there are 3 exceptions, but every self-employed person who uses their personal account for business matters will have great chaos sooner or later. And I appeal to you, get a business account. And if you haven't had one so far and now find SumUp quite interesting, then you can use this bank account. And it is completely sufficient. Money in, money out. That's 80, 90, 95% of the use cases. And for the other 5% of use cases, you can also use another bank account. But here you have one with. And with that, let's take a look at the prices. Because admittedly, the prices are a point or a main point why I find SumUp so incredibly exciting. Because SumUp is really affordable. At first glance, we can see here that there is a free plan. This means you pay nothing and can still issue e-invoices. And then there is a paid pro plan, and even that is quite inexpensive. It costs 4 euros per month, at least if you pay annually. If you pay monthly, it costs 5 euros per month, making it significantly cheaper than any full-fledged, complete accounting program, which you might not even need. Because SumUp handles invoices and not complete accounting. With a free account, you can send 4 invoices per month, which means 48 invoices per year. And when you send your invoices and your customers pay, it's through the payment link I mentioned. And you receive your money significantly earlier, there is indeed a fee for that. So, not for being paid earlier, but for processing the payment. And that is at a rate of 2.5, and some might think, oh, that's expensive. But one should also consider that the whole thing costs relatively much with other payment providers as well. So it doesn't matter whether you use Stripe, PayPal, Digistore, Cope Card, or whatever, you occasionally pay significantly more fees. Payment processing is simply a business model and is, among other things, the business model of SumUp. That's why you pay 2.5% there. I don't find that excessively much. And above all, you can still let your customers pay in a traditional and classic way simply via bank transfer. And you don't pay anything extra for that. However, and this is a limitation in the free account, you actually cannot change the IBAN in the free account. This means that if you are on the free plan, the IBAN from your SumUp account automatically appears on your invoices, and you receive the money for this invoice in your SumUp bank account. That's generally not a problem either. You can transfer it from there or use it to settle your invoices. But that is, of course, an important limitation you should be aware of. And then, in the free plan, you generally have a bit less flexibility. So, you only have one invoice template and must use this invoice template, and you don't have great options. To somehow customize it, honestly, I personally don't care about that. I've never cared about how my invoices look. What has always been important to me is that the invoices are paid as quickly as possible. But I'm also not a designer. I'm not someone who lives off aesthetics. And if it's different for you, and if you have an idea of how your invoice should be structured, then you might not be happy with it. But maybe with the paid pro plan. The pro plan costs, as mentioned, 4 euros per month. If you pay annually, otherwise 5 euros. And in the pro plan, do you then have unlimited? Many bill. That means you can write hundreds, thousands of invoices. No problem at all. And the fee for the payment, that is, for this payment link, is also reduced by another 50%. That means you then pay 1.25% on the invoice amount when a customer uses this link. If you want to be paid differently, for example by bank transfer, then you also have the option in the Pro plan to simply link and specify your own bank account. That means you receive the money where you want it. You can of course still use the SumUp account or use it additionally, but there are no requirements here. You also have the option to customize the invoice more individually. And yes, you have 14 invoice languages. So if you have customers abroad and they otherwise wouldn't understand what you write on the invoice, this can be quite practical. And with that, let's just take a look at SumUp. We are now here in the SumUp dashboard. On the left side, we see the menu. And we especially see that I have access to significantly more SumUp offerings here. So we see the business account, an online shop, bookings, expenses, invoices, payment link, and so on. This means I can do many things here. In this video, I want to focus on the invoicing tool. That means we will take a look at how to actually write invoices and how or where to record incoming invoices. And here on the home page, we see a few things we can do right away. For instance, we can send the payment link I mentioned. It looks a bit like this. And then our customers can click on it and pay directly. We can create an invoice directly here. And it also states here that we can create an e-invoice directly through this. But let's simply go to the menu on the left side to invoices. There we find the entire menu on the topic of creating invoices. And here you can see that I haven't issued any invoices this month yet. So in February 2025, I haven't created any invoices yet. If I want to create an invoice, I go to create in the top right corner, and then a drop-down menu opens, and I can first create an offer. I can create a classic invoice, meaning a PDF invoice, or an invoice that I print out and take to the post office, but let's not talk about that anymore. It's in the past. Or I create an e-invoice, and I'll just click on it so we can create an e-invoice together. The input form opens, which means I can now enter all the necessary details for an invoice. This means here, for instance, assign an invoice number. I can select the payment terms, 14 days, the issue date, the due date. And also, if I provided my service on a different day or in a different month, I can record the service period here again. Then I can write a few notes, for example. Vortau, thank you for the order. You can write that once. You can also set it so that it always appears here in the future, so you don't have to write it anew each time. And then I can select customers, here via a drop-down menu, or create them. I can generally do that. I can create products, meaning items and customers, once, and then I can always select them via a drop-down menu. And I'm going to do that right now. Specifically, I have now provided a service to Max Meyer. And now I can use Max Meyer just once or add him as a new customer so that I can easily select him with 2 clicks in the future. But I only want to send this invoice to Max Meyer once. And that's why I'm going to record the whole thing once. And we'll see each other again shortly when I'm ready. So I have created Max Meyer with the address and can collapse that again. And now I see this invoice is going to Max Meyer. I can also create items, and specifically I have provided bookkeeping and tax. Declaration 2024 for Max Meyer. I will create that as an item. This means I can now specify a few additional things here. For example, the unit price, which is 2,500 euros. The VAT rate, which is 19%. Piece is not the correct unit of measure, but rather years. And then I can assign a product number, which I don't need. And then in the future, I can simply select this product via a drop-down menu. Now for Max Meyer, that's enough. I see here net amount 2,500 euros plus 19% VAT is 2,975 euros. I could potentially attach general terms and conditions here, but I don't have any, and now I can decide how. I accept payments. Payments? Either via this payment link, where I have the transaction fee, or simply by bank transfer to my account, to my SumUp account, or also my other bank account. And I can still attach appendices here, for example, a time tracking. If I am billing expenses like travel costs, for instance, I could attach those, and so on. And then I click on Finish at the top right. In the next step, I see my payment link. So this is the link through which I can now be paid. And here I have the option to send the invoice directly. Since it is an e-invoice, I cannot print it out now. Because a printed e-invoice is no longer an e-invoice, but an e-invoice is an X-invoice or a Selbstständige invoice. And here I can actually make the choice of what I prefer. I personally honestly recommend that you send Selbstständige invoices because an X-invoice is nothing more than an XML file. And an XML file cannot be read without a tool. That means if your customer has no way to read an XML file, then you can, of course, recommend SumUp invoices to them, but what is a bit easier is you simply send them an invoice that they can read, namely a Selbstständige invoice. A Selbstständige invoice is a PDF invoice that has an integrated XML format. This means it is a combination format. And with this, a Selbstständige invoice can be easily read and viewed with any PDF reader. And then you don't run the risk of your customer not paying you because they can't read the invoice. That's why I recommend you send your customers a Selbstständige invoice. Then, of course, you need to provide the email address because an e-invoice is transmitted electronically. You now have the option to specify a subject and write an email, attach the attachments, and you also have the option to send automatic payment reminders, for example. It's relatively convenient if you don't want to chase after the customer and you already know, oh, Max Meyer always pays a bit late, then you can basically automate the payment reminder process here. And once you enter all that information, you simply click on Send, and the e-invoice is sent. But that's only one part of the equation. That means writing your invoices and getting the money is just one side. The slightly less attractive side is that the money unfortunately disappears again. That means you also receive invoices, and you might have exactly the problem that you receive an X invoice and can't just read an X invoice like that. That means even in times of e-invoicing, you need a tool with which you can read X invoices, or e-invoices in general. And you can actually do that with SumUp. Specifically, here on the left side, under Expenses, you can record your expenses. And you can record the expenses by clicking on Create Expense at the top right. And when we click on it, we can see what types of expenses you can record here. Namely from receipts, for example, cash register receipts from an email if you have received an invoice via email. From an e-invoice, meaning if you have an e-invoice and don't know what's inside, you can upload it or manually record it. And so, with SumUp, you also have the additional option to actually process, read, and directly pay incoming e-invoices. So if you have the SumUp business account, then you can, of course, pay the invoice you receive directly through here, and then the money simply gets deducted from your SumUp account. Let's move on to the summary and a brief conclusion. SumUp Invoices has several advantages for me. Firstly, I find it to be a nice, clear tool, and it is truly unbeatable in terms of value for money. You really get a lot of features for it. Almost nothing. You essentially start for free and can already do quite a lot with the free version, but even the paid version, which you currently need to actually meet all the legal requirements currently in place, you pay for. 4 or 5 euros per month. And you have the ability to write invoices, receive invoices. You get a bank account, you have the payment link, you can match each invoice with the payments and have an accounts receivable management system. What I also find quite exciting is that it is, of course, embedded in the SumUp universe. And it starts with this payment link, which I find a really nice feature, but even if you are already using other SumUp solutions, you have everything in one app. So if you have, for example, a SumUp terminal because you run a cafe, and then you have a company event at your place, you know for sure that the company booking your entire venue for the afternoon needs an invoice from you. But do you know that in the future it also has to be an e-invoice? That means there are some requirements. And I find it super relaxed and super convenient that you have everything in one tool. But of course, not just for them. I mean, if you're just starting part-time, writing a few invoices, being a company under certain circumstances, then you rarely have more than 4 invoices per month. And then you can simply start for free here. This means it is not only an attractive solution for cash-intensive businesses, but in my personal opinion, also for freelancers, service providers, consultants, and so on, when the company is of such a size that you need a separate invoicing tool. Because using Excel and Word is over in the era of e-invoices. And SumUp Invoices offers a really nice solution for that. But of course, there are always a few things that can be criticized. I have heard and read from some users that they are bothered by the fact that you can't super customize the invoices. And I have already mentioned, personally, I don't care at all. So, I'm not interested at all in how my invoice looks. What matters is that I have the money in the account afterwards. But if that's important to you, if you're a designer, if your work in general, I would say, is more influenced by aesthetics than my work, then you might be. In the end, not happy with the invoice format and the relatively rigid artist format that you have there. And then you need to be aware that this is an invoicing program. So, this is not an accounting program. And as a freelancer, you have more to do. And more requirements than just writing invoices, receiving invoices, and somehow paying them. You also have to file VAT returns, you have to do income surplus calculations, you have to make summary reports, and so on. And these functions are not available in SumUp Invoices. They are not supposed to be there at all. That is not the concept of this solution. You just need to be aware of that. That means if you are looking for an accounting program and want to save money, then SumUp Invoices is not your solution because you still need all these functions. And that brings us to a point of criticism that personally bothers me and where I would wish that SumUp would focus a bit more on in the future. Because I actually find SumUp Invoices to be a super exciting, attractive solution, as it is a streamlined invoicing program. But, as I already mentioned, invoice management, being money in and out, is not the only thing you have to do for your accounting. You have to continue with something else afterwards. That means the value creation of such a tax declaration goes beyond just the invoices, and I would wish for the whole process to go more smoothly. Because SumUp, it sometimes feels a bit like a closed system, but I still have to continue working somehow. How do I now do my VAT advance return? How do I handle my IOR statement? I have to do all of that. And of course, I can export the invoice and payment information from SumUp in CSV or Excel format and import it elsewhere. But I have to say, in theory it works. Also, it could be nicer. So I would wish for there to be integration with accounting software. Why not with 1 or 2 clicks? Transfer the data from SumUp Invoices into an invoicing program? Or transfer it to the tax advisor, to Dativ Online, for example, in 2 or 3 clicks? Or simply get the export file directly in Dativ format so that my tax advisor can work with it directly. And I have to say, the export function or even the integration with the additional tools needed to meet tax obligations could be handled more elegantly, to put it that way. So you can work with it, that's not a problem, but it would function a bit smoother and more seamlessly. And I would hope that this might be improved in the coming months and years. But, and I must repeat myself, if you're using a streamlined invoicing program because the days of Word, Excel, and so on are over, then definitely take a look at SumUp Invoices. For me personally, it's a great tool. You can find all the information under the first link in the video description below. Take a look at the whole thing. And I would like to share a little anecdote here about why I was somewhat excited when I discovered SumUp Invoices. Or, how should I say, rediscovered it. Because at some point I did an apprenticeship and studied, and I worked in tax consulting, in a small firm, in a large firm, then I was at KPMG, and then I became self-employed as a consultant for your accounting programs, tax software, and so on. And about 10 years ago, I had a client with whom I worked very intensively. It was a Danish company that wanted to enter the German market, and it developed an online invoicing program. And this company was eventually sold. And then the project eventually ended, and I was no longer involved. This company, this invoicing program, that I worked on for about 3 years was sold to SumUp. And I have to honestly say, now I've stumbled upon SumUp Invoices, and I'm looking at this software, and I'm thinking I worked on that. So in some areas, and conceptually. And so you can in fact still see the remnants here and there in various places. Sort of kind of something I worked on about 10 years ago or so. And somehow that makes me proud. It's a bit like a friend you haven't seen in 10 years. And then you meet them and they're doing great. And they have amazing stories to tell. Of course the software has evolved. Clearly it now belongs to and is part of this SumUp universe. But in this video, I actually introduced and showed you a software that I worked on myself for 3 years. And that's why I was personally very pleased about it. And I'm genuinely happy that the offer is really a good one. And that's why I wholeheartedly recommend it to you. But I've also done a bit more with SumUp. In fact, I recorded a video series with SumUp. You can find this video series on SumUp's YouTube channel. Feel free to search for it and watch these videos. In some of the videos, I explained what the invoicing obligation is, where we currently stand on the topic of digitalization in financial administration. And of course, I also introduced SumUp Invoices to you. And I would be delighted if you take a look at these videos. I will, of course, also link them for you below in the video description and maybe leave a nice comment for SumUp. Write it under these videos. I would personally be very pleased. Otherwise, take a look at SumUp Invoices. I am happy to link it for you again here and watch the videos on the SumUp channel, for example, this one or that one.